Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next installment of the Matrix One webinar series. My name is Alex Condon, and I'm the COO and co-founder of Matrix Connect, and I will be one of your two hosts today. Joining me is Abbas Dilawala, Global CTO of Matrix One, and together we'll be discussing connecting your medical device to the cloud, and at the end, we'll show you what we built to help make it easier. Quickly for some background, Matrix Connect provides an FDA-compliant cloud for medical device manufacturers. Matrix Connect provides a configurable platform for device-to-cloud connectivity that is compliant to FDA, HIPAA, and CE mark standards. We're ISO 13485 certified, and the product on AWS is HITRUST certified as well. Founded by seasoned medical device professionals, our goal is to make medical device cloud connectivity available to all at a fraction of the cost while shaving months off development timeline. Matrix Connect allows medical device companies to stay medical device companies and not become IT companies. And thank you today for your attention. First, before we get started, a few housekeeping items. So for just some quick logistics, as we're going through this webinar, if you have any questions, you can type those in the Q&A section available on the sidebar to your right. We'll either ask those questions at the end, or if appropriate, I'll try to bring those up during our conversation. Also, just a reminder to everyone, a copy of this webinar will be distributed out to everyone via email after it's over. Next slide. So for some personal background, what is now Matrix Connect was founded in 2016. And prior to that, both Abbas and I were in the process of building many of these kind of custom cloud solutions for medical device and pharma companies. And after seeing the difficulties of bringing connected devices to market and making a bet that there'd be more in the future, we founded the company with a platform approach. Prior to that, we worked together at a NASA contractor in Southeast Houston, just around the corner from Johnson Space Center, which is where our offices are today. Abbas, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Abbas Dilawala. I'm the CTO of Matrix One. I'm also co-founder of Matrix Connect. I've spent last 20 plus years building regulated medtech software between biotech, pharma, and device. And today I look after engineering across Matrix One. That includes Matrix Connect, but also our ALM, our QMS, and our other products.
Perfect. Next slide. So for some background on Matrix One and Matrix Connect in general, the company that is now Matrix One was founded back in 2015, so quite a while ago for this industry. We have a global presence, including 4 global offices and 500 plus life science and medical device customers worldwide, spanning from the earliest startups all the way through some of the strategics that you can see below. We joined Matrix One in December of 2024 via acquisition. And we are also, as I mentioned earlier, basically built for medical devices by being both HITRUST and ISO 13485 certified. Next slide. So today's agenda, it's basically 5 different sections. Abbas is going to discuss kind of the reality of connecting medical devices to the cloud, why building this kind of infrastructure is very hard, even in the face of AI these days, how we have taken this configurable approach to try to make that path traveled very easy for you. Then we'll be showing a live demo of the product, and then, as I mentioned, kind of answering any questions that might pop up during the webinar. Next. So to kind of start with kind of a problem statement, that connected medical devices are no longer a differentiator. And for a long time, they were kind of seen as an outlier, but now, obviously post-COVID, data is becoming more integral, both for medical devices to be able to come up with kind of more novel ways of delivering their therapy or their diagnostic, but also being able to iterate and create newer, better devices in the future. So it is kind of no longer a nice to have, but very much a requirement. Abbas, off to you.
Yeah, so I want to talk about kind of in the last 24 months, what specifically has changed within this industry. So first, what we have seen change in this industry. So I've kind of three things. One is tighter timelines, right? So connected functionality, as Alex mentioned, is kind of being asked for more and more in medical devices. Historically, medical devices used to be this unconnected thing. You sit, you take data. I still remember, about a few years ago, people that use sleep apnea machines, for example, to use their data, somebody has to, the patient had to take out a SD card and take it to the clinician's office, and then they would read all the data, and there was just a delay in that kind of data management. Today, pretty much all sleep apnea machines are connected, just because uh, that's kind of where the industry is moving, based on kind of expectations, but also based on how some of the reimbursement works. And we see more and more of that, right? So we see a lot of tighter timelines to get connected functionality in V1 of the device rather than V2, V3, or V4 as used to be the case. So the the boards want faster connectivity, and we kind of see that timelines being scrunched. Second, as you may all have known, the bar for cybersecurity has historically been very low in the industry, but has in the last 2+ years really risen, right? Specifically around the FDA in the US, wanting, the cybersecurity guidelines that came out in 2023 raised a lot of requirements that must be met by companies doing any kind of connectivity, not just connectivity to the cloud, but any kind of connectivity. If you have Bluetooth or if you have any sort of local connectivity, you still have that bar. And EU is moving in the same direction with NIS2. We already have the standards, the 8101, that comes into play with software cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is no longer just a thing that somebody does. It's an important workflow within your product development life cycle, and so that is an important thing. And third, margins. As we know, the economy is moving towards a much more competitive level. You no longer compete just within your country; you compete globally. Cloud spend can be visible very much in the balance sheets, and so budgets are tightening for many reasons, and so you have smaller margins to get things right. So building yourself is harder than it looks. I understand there may be skepticism to that statement. I completely understand the skepticism, but let's take a look deeper why I say that, right? So I'm not going to pretend that AI hasn't changed things. We know how fast we can write code. It absolutely has. In fact, we use a lot of AI to write our own code. But AI doesn't solve everything. It doesn't solve the problems that many times kill this project when you try to build your own. So what are these problems, right? So what we call the kind of the regulatory iceberg. So in a traditional iceberg metaphor, you have all the things you can see and things you can't see. Code, software code is generally that thing you can see. But then below that iceberg, below the sea level, you will see a lot of things that you must do to get a medical device compliant cloud out into the field, and that includes things like lifecycle records. Okay, so you still need if you're doing software, most likely medical device software, then you need IEC 304 compliant artifacts, design controls, design history files, validation records, all that kind of stuff. Hard for AI to just generate on its own, right? You still have to kind of put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into building these things. Obviously, quality systems. So you're not getting away from a quality system. You still have to build out the requisite stuff needed for this kind of project, and stuff to find things, audits and supply Q&A and those kind of stuff that comes from your customers. Data privacy doesn't go away. In fact, it goes worse in the age of AI. So you still have to comply with, if you're in the US, comply with HIPAA or GDPR, data residency. You have to get all the agreements in place, retention for data, all that kind of stuff doesn't go away. Cybersecurity doesn't go away. As I mentioned, the FDA has the 524B. You have to give the SBOMs, do the threat modeling, do vulnerability management, continuously vulnerability management, disclosures, firmware updates depending on what things happen, or cloud updates depending on things happen, manage version history, all that kind of stuff. Post-market, as kind of mentioned, reporting MDRs or whatever the equivalent is in Europe. Um, Software change control, all that kind of stuff. Supply chain management. A lot of the software is built on other people's software. That's just normal. A lot of that is open source. You got to manage that. You got to have the right the right controls on these SPONs and so on. So every one of these is a work stream, and together they take a lot of time on a project when you try to build something. And that's true for any software, not just cloud software. But when you start another work stream within your organization, you're gonna need to do all this stuff, right? So code is one part. Maybe 40% of the effort is there, or 50% of the effort is there, but there's another 50 to 60% of effort on kind of these things that one must account for as they build this kind of software. So let's kind of talk. I just want to be fair that AI can do many things, as I kind of mentioned. It's very great at doing certain things like boilerplate endpoints, so creating APIs, boilerplate APIs, at least maybe not necessarily completely your business logic, but unit tests, integration as code, um, some sort of scaffolding of documentation, first pass, things like that. A little bit of dashboarding, maybe architecture sketches, those kind of things. You can do a lot of stuff, and we do it ourselves, and there's a lot of productivity. So let's that keep that in mind, that that's true today. But on the right is things, as I kind of mentioned, things you start to build, like design history files, IEC, 304 lifecycle records. I've kind of mentioned some of these already. But why I want to make sure, repeat this, is to just to produce these items. Time to produce this item doesn't really compress much, even with AI tools, right? So the project, let's say historically took 12 months, and 12 months of that, by using AI, you're not going to go down to like 3 months or 2 months or 1 month. A lot of the work is still going to take some time, because from a time perspective, you start to build these things, and historically you had code being done in parallel to some of these activities. So even though you can scrunch the time to build code much, you don't necessarily have a very good way to scrunch the rest of the stuff, even with AI. And that's kind of the AI paradox. Like you can get a lot of gain in one part, but that doesn't necessarily compress the timeline over the overall project. You still have to account for these things. And then there's cost, right? So this is this is actually from our own calculator. So you can actually try out these calculator on our website. It's kind of what we call the total cost of ownership calculator. And I've used this to illustrate certain things, right? So this one particular calculation is based on assumption that this is a class B, a 62304, class B software, needs to comply with HIPAA, and has kind of moderately complex features. You can play with this calculator, you can change some parameters and kind of see. The calculation is based on our experience for the last 20 years on building cloud. So it's not kind of just made up stuff. I mean, it is real. Obviously, the AI can scrunch a little bit of that, so it doesn't account for AI at this point. But even if we were to scratch that, I kind of mentioned some of this is not, some of the costs there are real and they don't go away. For example, the infrastructure cost. If you build it yourself, you start to run it, right? You still have to own the infrastructure or rent an infrastructure from something like AWS or Google Cloud or whatever. And that cost is real, that shows up. You still need someone to manage kind of the infrastructure, to manage the cybersecurity, to do logs, to kind of do backups and then make sure stuff works, to do validation of these processes, to answer questions when things are not working. All that kind of still doesn't completely go away. So you still have real cost. And a lot of this, kind of what I see, the show you with the 2.3 million US dollars is the 5-year total cost of ownership. Only a small percentage of that is actually the build cost. So the build cost can be reduced significantly, but the rest of the stuff still remains, right? So it can become very expensive to build your own over a 5-year period. And then on the middle is kind of the R cost. If you use us, you can kind of see almost a 10x reduction. And then time saved. Like this is a real, real customer of ours who kind of did an analysis of how much time it would have taken them to build, and they say, minimum, even with AI, minimum 6 months to build, and that to me is an underestimation. In reality, it could be much more, but at the minimum, they would have saved 6 months. So, okay, going faster to market, making sure connectivity is in that we want. If you want that, then building can be a problematic. So, kind of, what does Matrix Connect offer? How do we solve that problem? Right. So the problem I kind of mentioned, what Matrix Connect is a build for technical and regulatory demands of medtech. So we just didn't build a cloud because that wouldn't necessarily do anything. It would be easy to build, right? So you just build a cloud and say, here it is. We build it so that you can actually use it within the medical industry, right? Which means we build it like this was a medical device. We build it with the right set of documentation. We went through the right process. We are certified. Our QMS, is certified to ISO 13485, which means we follow the life cycle. We build this with the design controls, have the right technical files. So even if we are not medical device, we build it with the same rigor, like we were building a medical device software. And what that does mean is that when you are considering us, you have all the right, from your own supplier evaluation, you will basically find everything that you need is done by us within this cloud project, and that your overhead on that cloud project is very minimal. We provide you with the right set of documentation. So let's say you go to submission, whether let's say FDA, for example, and you say, hey, I need for my 524B, I need all the cybersecurity documentation. We provide you from our documentation those pieces. So we give you our cybersecurity plan, we give you our cybersecurity analysis, our threat models, we give you our pen test reports. We do all that on within this offering, and then same, if a FDA comes and asks questions, we sit down with them. With your team, obviously, and answer those questions. You go to a customer site, let's say you go to a hospital, and the hospital asks you to fill out a 200-page or 200 questions questionnaire. We do that for you because we already have all the answers. And so those kind of services, we have built it for this specific industry, not a general purpose cloud. Similarly, cybersecurity, we are HITRUST. What does that mean? Some of me not even know what HITRUST is. It's relatively new. When I say relatively, it's not 5 years old, but it's essentially a framework that combines a lot of international standards with a lot of regulation into one certifiable framework. So it builds upon things like ISO 27001, the IEC 8001, and so on, and then adds in the requirements from HIPAA, requirements from GDPR, requirements for other privacy regulations around the world, and kind of creates a framework. And it's very hard to get. It takes a long time, but once you have it, it shows the rigor of the system, the rigor of the operational controls, and the rigors of kind of the procedural management of these systems. And that's kind of why we do this, because we are very focused on the medtech. We want to make sure our cybersecurity bar is very high. We want to make sure our design control bar is very high, so that you can be very assured of when you use our system that's built for this industry with the right regulatory and technical demands. So at a high level, it's very high level. We can go in detail if need be on a very specific call. But at a high level, we have basically 4 kind of groups, and we want to talk through these things. So one is kind of the data management, right? So what we call device data, but data management in general, which means that includes a lot of kind of defining the data definition, or we call modeling, ingestion of data that comes in, monitoring of data that includes, maybe real-time monitoring, or may includes kind of notifications based on events or based on data streams. Managing device families, managing dashboards, so you can kind of share this information with different stakeholders, managing the device firmwares, and so on. And then the other one is security and access, so making sure the right people have the right control, right? So all the kind of what we call role-based access controls, so RBAC, is built into our system, and I kind of show you a little bit of that. We do a lot of the things that are required, like encryption throughout the chain, and transit at rest, audit logs that are immutable. We provide web portals that are mobile friendly, where you can start, accessing some of this information and so on. Uh, Integrations. So we provide an API and in some cases native SDKs so that your devices can be integrated quickly within our ecosystem. We also provide HL7 connectivity and FHIR connectivities to go to a EMR. So some use cases require that data not stay just in our system, but also a subset of that data goes into EMR, and we provide that as well. And then compliance is the pillar that ties everything together. As kind of mentioned again already, we are ISO 34 certified, HITRUST certified, and we kind of comply with most of the regulations around the planet. We have customers today pretty much everywhere. I think we have all 6 continents, minus Antarctica, of course. Customers that are selling their devices in there, and we have deployments across the world, and we kind of manage all that through a single subscription. So kind of want to talk high level at our architecture, very high level, the architecture. So you kind of see the cloud, as we have mentioned, the Matrix Connect cloud that's in the middle. Mention APIs, SDKs. The SDKs just wrap the APIs. So really it's the APIs behind the scene for everything in our system, right? From user management to kind of organization management to device management, data management. Everything you can do in a system has an API that you can leverage from your devices or your apps or whatever you need to connect to. And then you can create as complex or as simple a workflow you want within the system. As I mentioned, we provide the web portals, and I'll show you an example of that in the demo section of this webinar. And then we also have the third-party systems which connect via HL7 and to an EMR. We also allow our customers to kind of manage their own custom UIs if needed, and there's multiple ways to do that, and we can go into more detail there. But you kind of see that there's a lot less you have to build because its system is there. You have the cloud, you have the web interface. You may need some customization. We understand that, but again, that is much smaller project than trying to build everything. And then you have just the integration with your devices because you control that device firmware. So, real-time monitoring. We basically configurable dashboards, and I can show you an example of this in a demo. So we'll talk about some of these monitorings and notifications. And also another thing we do is allow you to do post-processing of the data. So you can kind of create, so you're not limited to just our system as data ingestion and storage and monitoring, but you can create your own post-processing routines and deploy within our system pretty easily. And these routines could do things like create a very customized PDF, for example, as a report, or can do normalization of the data. So we have customers like the sleep apnea customers I was talking about, for example. A lot of that is a lot of the intelligence around that doesn't come directly from the device. The device is more of a collection tool. It will collect a lot of raw data, like every breath, for example, is monitored and collected. And then a lot of the intelligence around whether this is an apnea or not, and different events, and maybe a quality of sleep, an example, extra things like that can be done as a post-processing routine that is very, very custom to that particular customer that they build. And that's kind of the secret sauce, right? So you still control your secret sauce that adds value to your product without having to rebuild the infrastructure. The infrastructure, let's be honest, is not the differentiator. The differentiator would be, kind of what you do with that infrastructure. So another thing, firmware delivery. So that's another aspect we host. I'll show you this in the demo again, but we can host firmware artifacts, and then we provide these APIs to be able to query and download these artifacts from the device itself, notification also to the device as well, and then all integrity checks and things like that that can happen. One last slide before we go into demo, and I just want to talk about cybersecurity specifically. So here's a kind of an architecture that we built. So you can see everything that needs to do to build a cloud project, right? So everything from kind of the hardware level infrastructure management, the storage, the compute, the database, all that kind of stuff, and then all the software layers on top, and then all the compliance level, which are shown on the right. So you can see I use AWS as an example here, but you can be any particular public infrastructure. A lot of that is provided by something like AWS. So you're not necessarily, hopefully, not necessarily renting computers in your office and doing this. But if you were to build, you will have a lot of those things that are in orange kind of provided to you by a public infrastructure, but then you still have all the blues that you need to do one way or the other, right? So that the blue is essentially what Matrix Connect tackles, right? So we tackle a lot of the encryption, the backup, cybersecurity monitoring, and then our application provides you with this RBAC and notifications and dashboardings and things like that, and obviously the compliance that goes with it. So I think we have about 35 minutes. Let me jump into the demo. And what I'm going to try to do in this demo is show you essentially mostly four of these things. One is kind of onboarding, although I'll cheat a little bit on that just because of time constraints. But onboarding, ingestion, monitoring, and then distribution of workflow. Right. So let me switch to our web portal interface. And so here is our demo interface, and our system is, as mentioned, role-based. So different roles will have different things they can do. I'm just going to log in as an admin, just so I can show you everything. But it's completely up to you how you customize this system. So when I log in, I jump into what's called a dashboard. I'll come to a dashboard in a second. So let's talk about it. And as I mentioned in the slide, we'll talk about onboarding. So let's start with that. So I go to the admin console where you do a lot of the administration aspect. Here you see a lot of users, but we'll skip that right now. And we'll go into what we call device types. Device types are essentially just product or product families, right? So here I have a device called Vitals Monitor. This is a mythical Vitals Monitor that supposedly measures all my vitals. I don't have actual hardware, so I'm going to use a software simulator that I built to kind of do this. And I'll explain what that, in fact, let me just end here so I can kind of show you. So assume this is a device, so an actual device simulator for now, but I kind of build this to work with this demo. So what we do on onboarding, there's different ways to onboard in our system, but the simplest way, and I'm going to use that just because of time constraints, but the simplest way is to create a device instance, or what we call a device in the system. So you can add a device here and basically put an identifier, and that's like here, it's just added to the system. Then you can assign that device to someone. So in this case, the VT001, I assigned to patient Mary. And the easiest way to connect, not necessarily the only way, but the easiest way is to use what we call device tokens. You can do certificates, you can do other things, but device tokens is just the easiest way. And device tokens are just like an API key. So you create one and you can, can make it expire, you can deactivate it, you can do all kinds of stuff, you can rotate it. So here I just created a what we call a sim token just for my simulation, and I've already configured my simulator here to use this device. So the simulator, it's parameterized. So I just put the identifier so that I can behave like that device. Obviously, that's not going to be real in your use case. And I put in the device token here. So let me make sure it sends to the right. Okay, so one thing, so this is setting up the device. But then we also need to set up the data store, right? So all the data has to go somewhere. And I mentioned kind of modeling. So that's kind of what we do. So we create what we call a data model, essentially a container of data that allows you to store this information. So I have this container called Vitals Data that I will show you. And this Vitals Data right now has 7 different pieces of information that I configured it to save. It's very easy to do. You just create what we call a property, come here, put a name, pick the type of property, whether it's a number, a text, and we have quite a bit of an option here to select from. So you can select what type of that data is. You can add validation. So you can say, hey, if this is a number, let's say heart rate, then I can say, my heart rate must be between X and Y because that's all my device can measure, and that way you can catch issues very quickly. You can kind of manage things. You can make it required, make it unique, and so on. You can provide default values if you need be, and then something that we provide is attribute level control. So this particular property or heart rate or element, you can select which roles within the system can view this information, right? So that's something not necessarily available out there in other products. But here I just selected all, but you can select whatever roles make sense. And these roles, by the way, are completely customizable. You can add roles here, and you can define the permission schemes and everything in the system. So this is just the things I've defined in the demo instance. And so I have all that here. I can also check who can write, right? So all this is grouped into what we call a property set. And the property set today is that only the device can write, which means nobody else, no other user can input data into this container. Only the device can send the container. You can change that. You can add, you can add other options here. That's how I've configured. So now that we know the configuration, I can come here. Let's say all the configuration was done, and it's very quick to do if you know what you're building. And then you come into your device. In this case, I'll use a simulator. You point to the right data model. You have the right authentication, and I'm just going to start. So here it authenticates, and the session is started. And I can, in my simulator, I built both options. So I can send individual data points, or I can do a continuous send. And I'm going to use the interval of 15 seconds, right? So every 15 seconds, it's going to send me a new vitals. And I'm just going to hit start, and you kind of see that it started. It also sent the first data point. The system returns back the information, and here it just sends spitting out the what we call the record ID, the unique record ID. So that's the ingestion piece. It's being injecting. Then how do I know it works? So for that, we go back to the dashboard. So up here, back here. Okay, so the dashboard, just to quickly explain what a dashboard is. Dashboard is something you can build yourself. Sorry, I need to do that. And each tab here is a separate dashboard. So I have a summary tab and the vitals data tab. You can add a new dashboard here. You can put stuff here. Again, this is all controlled by permissions. So you define which roles can do this stuff and which can't. We also allow you to share dashboards, and I'll show that in a sec. In a dashboard, you can have these collection of widgets. So here I only have one widget, which is a tabular widget. I can add more widgets. I can pick from our list here. This is a small list today on the demo instance, but you can add, there's more, and you can also make your own custom widgets, right? So you can add, a different way of presenting information. Let's say if the widgets we provide are not enough for kind of what you're trying to do. So you can add these things. They will get added. You can resize them, so you can kind of make this big and small as you want. You can kind of do things you can configure. Each widget will have slightly different configuration, but largely the similar thing is you select data you want to see. So in this case, I selected 5 different things. You can apply a function. You can either see raw data or apply a function. So I just said I want to see the latest information or the last function. And then you have a bunch of other options. You have filtering. So I'm seeing from the last 30 days, but you can pick a range, or you can have custom values. You can add criteria. So you can say, I only want to see if the data matches this, this, and this condition. All that criteria can be ands and ors. You can make very complex scenarios if you want. In here, every widget will have specific settings. So here I only have one thing selected, which is it refreshes every 15 seconds. So you will see that in every 15 seconds we see new data, and that matches my ingestion screen. So if I want to really do monitoring here, I can kind of wait and see every 15 seconds it will update to a new value, right? So and again, it's just right now it went from 139 to 115 on the BP, so that's the update. I have on this different tab a different widget, which is the a graph, right? So here I'm using what I call a combo chart. So I'm using a line chart and a bar chart. And if I see the configuration here, you'll see my heart rate and respiratory rate are what's shown here. Sorry,
Well, Abbas finds himself back. Any questions from the audience? I'll mention some that we get asked relatively frequently. One being kind of how we handle kind of international deployments. So regionality is very important in the connected medical device space. So We always kind of go where our clients need to go in that respect to make sure that our infrastructure is kind of available to their clients. I see Abbas is back.
Sorry, I must have clicked on the wrong button.
No problem. And I'll just finish that one,
So,
Stephen. And then we make sure that we comply with all kind of local privacy and regulatory norms inside of that jurisdiction. Go ahead, Abbas. Sorry.
sorry for the disruption. So I was saying, this particular widget, I've configured it to be a heart rate and respiratory rate as line and bar. I also have selected it to show a zoom option, so I can kind of you see the zoom options here. I'll show you a second. But also added a moving average trend line, right? So again, all that I have to do is say moving average, specify the amount of prior data points to average out, in this case 5, and then just the display parameters. And also I have this refreshing every 15 seconds as well. So you kind of already see the data updates every 15 seconds. I can kind of do quick monitoring of this particular data, and I can see, hey, it seems to be working fine. Now, all this is, assigned to Mary, right? So that's because if you remember, if I go back here into the device type, is that I had assigned the VT001 to Mary. But let's say what happens if I change that association, right? So for example, let's say I want to click here, and instead of Mary, let's say I want Jack to be the new owner of this device. For whatever reason, device came away from Mary and now it went to Jack. So now what happens to those data? So let's see. So now if I go back to my dashboard, um, as it sends new data, so right now everything is still Mary because the next data hasn't arrived yet, or maybe arrived just before I switched to the to Mary. But now you see that there's a new series that I got added, right? So this is now Jack. This is Mary. This is Jack. So in our system, data is attributed to what we call an owner. In this case, the owner is a patient. It could be a group or could be something else like a clinic or whatever. But in this case, because it's a patient, in our system, when data is coming from a device, and our device is assigned to Jack, the data got allocated to Jack. Now that we moved it, it was allocated to Mary. Now that we moved to Jack, new data from that point on will go to Jack, but the old data still stays with Mary. And that's important because Mary's clinician, for example, still has access to Mary's data. And that means they will still be able to see those vitals from that particular device from point A to point B. Now, if Mary got a new device, that new device will collect data and start assigning that data back to Mary. So Mary may have a full stream of data properly, but some of it may come from device A, some of it may come from device B. And so really that's kind of an important aspect in our system is to kind of manage that ownership because a lot of the rules around access control depend on that ownership. And so that's kind of what I saw here. Now let's say I have access to both Jack and Mary. That's what I'm seeing, Jack and Mary. But let's say I don't care about Mary anymore, and I only want to see Jack. So I can come and quickly filter this here, and you'll see that I have just Jack's information. And I can look at this. Again, I can make this bigger and smaller to kind of suit whatever my display looks like. But let's say I want to kind of maybe narrow down into, so I can again use my zoom options here to look at stuff. I can maybe zoom into a different section, and there's only one point, so I can maybe reset back. But I can kind of manipulate that data. I can change this information. So I'm only seeing last hour, but let's say I want to see last 15 days. I can come here and see, and you'll see a lot of these every time I do a demo. Essentially, you'll see this kind of spikes. But that's all that data is. So you can kind of manipulate or access this data in different ways. You can export this data. You can print the widget itself. So if I print, you'll see just the widget that is getting printed. So you can take that and then put in something else. I guess mentioning export data as CSV. So all that kind of stuff is there. Now, let's say the data is coming in, and you can see that my heart rate is fluctuating because it's just a simulator. It's a naive simulator, so it just goes up and down. But let's say I want to know every time the heart rate goes, let's say, about 80, right? So I want a notification, or I want the patient to have a notification. Either way, I go into what we call an event. So I create an event, and let's say I'm going to call it heart rate high. Okay. and I will pick, let's say, I'll pick the resource. So in this case, I can put an event on anything, but in this case, it's the data. So the data record, I only want if it's valid, otherwise there's no point, and it's my vitals data, right? So I know that's there. I can add a criteria. I can say when heart rate is, let's say, greater than or equal to 80, do something. I can add more criteria. Again, I can make it complex. So there can be complex ands and ors and nested conditions. But anytime when this is true, I want to be easily do something, right? So let's say add task. And what do I want to do? So I can pick a task that's already there. So I already created a task, just for simplicity, called send mail to pass. That's just a task. You can have a different task. I can see what that is. It's a pretty simple email notification sent to me. And now it doesn't have to come to me. It can come to, you can go to the patient. You can use what we call substitution tags. Choose, for example, instead of picking mine, you could just do something like this. And what that will do is essentially substitute for whoever the record belongs to. So in this case, let's say the record belongs to Jack, then Jack's email address will be used. Or you can say, I want to send to the practitioner, and you can just say group.email address, or whoever, whichever group, essentially in this case, the clinic, that this belongs to, it will go there. So you can kind of have these substitutions, but again, since I don't have Jack's email, I'm just going to use this to demonstrate kind of stuff, right? So I basically create this particular event, and now anytime heart rate is greater than or equal to 80, I should be getting an email. So let's see, since I created this, okay, there should be multiple. So if I go into my inbox, which is here, and I should have seen an email. And right here is an email. So if this is again using our standard template, and let me make it white so it's easier to see. But you can customize this template as well. So this, you don't have to use template, but you can kind of see that I'm getting that particular event. And the reason I see these two things is because in my task, which I probably didn't show you very well, that's what I've done, right? So in my body, I'll have heart rate, and then I actually use a substitution tag to put in the heart rate, and then also the temperature. And my email subject is high HR. So that's the same thing I see here, high HR, and then I see these two, right? So very simple to create notifications. You can do emails, you can do read only, but you can do emails, you can do SMS, you can do voice calls, you can do push notifications, webhooks, all kinds of different things within the system to do some notification. So that's essentially the notification part. Just do a quick check. So let's see, the last thing I want to kind of show you as per the slide was the firmware, right? So I go back to my admin panel, and I go into device types, and I see, hey, I have something called firmware here, right? So for this particular product or a product model called Vitals Monitor, I have a firmware repository. So right now I only have firmware 1, which is V1, and you'll see all that devices here are all V1. So that's what the firmware is being done. Let's say I have a new firmware version for whatever reason. Maybe there's a cybersecurity fix I need to do, or I just have new functionality, and I want to basically roll this out to that particular user. So a particular, or the devices in the field. So I can quickly add here, and I can say V2, and let's say fantastic. Second type. Let's say it's 2.0. Our priority is just a metadata. We don't care. You can put it, but you can use this priority metadata on your own workflow. So you can have your device basically maybe silently update critical bug fixes, or make the user update anything critical or high before they can do anything, not allow them to defer anything, and maybe normals and low can be deferred. But we don't necessarily use that. It's something you can provide. By default, it's normal, but let's say I do a high here for some reason, and then I can pick a file. I don't have a real firmware, so I'm just going to pick a random firmware here. Call this, okay. And then I would need to provide a SHA-256 hash. This is something that we use then to make sure that the firmware you're uploading is the firmware we are getting, the firmware we are storing, and then when we deliver it back to the device, we make sure before we deliver that that's the firmware we are delivering. So we kind of use that as a checksum across the pipeline to make sure that happens. And I'm just going to cheat a little bit instead of trying to create one. I already have one here, so let me quickly copy that. And put it here. So now that's my SHA. So I do a create, and then my V2 is created. Now I mentioned notification, right? So I have that simulator, and when I upload, we basically send out a notification. So here you can see in the simulator, I had cleared the log before I printed anything. So you can see, hey, new firmware is available. And then in this simulator, I just print the version and the priority, but you can use this to kind of have your own workflow. So you can have that as, maybe that's a prompt to prompt the user if you have like a display or something that allows you to allow interaction, whether the user wants to deploy the new firmware, or you can do whatever workflow makes sense. We do not execute because that's really dependent on the device, so we are really just delivering a notification and then allowing you to pull a firmware update from our system. So that's kind of in a nutshell our system. I know we are running a little late, so I'm going to stop here and maybe switch back. But if you want a deeper demo, definitely reach out and we can go into much more deeper. There's a lot of functionality that unfortunately I don't have time to show today, but a lot of functionality around roles management, user management, kind of groups, so you can kind of combine things into clinics or hospitals and share things, so you selectively can see which role sees what information, which roles can do certain things, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff around that, integrations obviously into HL7 and so on. But what I showed you today is roughly basically the kind of device onboarding, ingestion, monitoring, alerting, and firmware notification. We wanted to keep some time for Q&A, so I'm going to just say one last thing. These are two real quotes from two of our customers, both basically talking about a lot of time and headache that was saved by working with us. And you can find more information on our website. But I'm going to stop here and open up for any questions.
Let's see here. We have a question from, does HITRUST help for hospital connectivity?
Yes, a lot. So
like an astounding amount.
Yes, astounding amount. So quite a bit of, so it helps in two ways, right? So many hospitals, at least in the US and increasingly in Europe, will take HITRUST as basically an alternative to their security processes. So if they say, okay, HITRUST certified, it's just like ISO certification. A lot of time, ISO certification it skips a lot of the processes. So HITRUST can do the way same thing. In some cases, it doesn't do that. But even in those cases, what they have is essentially they'll ask you for a bunch of information, and those bunch of information is easily mapped to everything we do with HITRUST. So we essentially have built all these answers already, and we quickly provide you with all the answers that the hospital is asking. But yes, in general, it resolves quite a bit the process.
Okay, another question came through. In our company, we are developing custom algorithms for early detection of medical conditions. Can you give an example or demo of how such a model would be integrated into your platform and how models can be connected to sensor data via custom workflows?
Yes, so that is not uncommon in our current kind of client base. We have a lot of customers doing very similar things, whether it's a custom algorithm or just a report, doesn't really matter. The way it works is kind of the workflow I mentioned. So you bring in the device ingestion happens when the device raw data, essentially the data that's coming from the device comes to our system. We can essentially invoke a report generation or a model or whatever post processing or whatever you need to do. That is your custom piece. That custom piece lives in its own kind of space that you manage, so you can update that quickly and have your own lifecycle around that. But we manage from an infrastructure, from a cybersecurity point of view, and then basically that piece of code or call or whatever, it gets invoked, it can do its thing, and then it can push back the results. Whether the results is a diagnosis or report or whatever that be, back into our platform. So that is very similar. So I'll give two examples. One customer, the sleep apnea customer I mentioned, does that very similar. Kind of already mentioned they have a secret sauce which is analyzing their own data and to creating the insights for clinicians, whether the apnea events or like a quality score, and they display that back to the clinician in kind of a report format. So that workflow is very similar. Data comes in, gets ingested. We invoke the algorithm that does this analysis and pushes it back. Right. We have other customers that use an AI pipe chain, a tool chain essentially to do image analysis or image detection of certain things in image. So again, same thing. Images are uploaded in our system. We invoke their pipeline. It goes through their own, whatever the AI does, and then basically results that are some are categorical, like yes or no, and some are more, specific annotations on those on those images are uploaded back, and that's what the clinician sees. They see the process information. So your workflow is very doable. That's kind of very much what our customers do.
Another question came in. How long does it take to onboard, and what is involved in that process?
So onboarding can be quick. It depends on the complexity of the integration, uh, the kind of bandwidth your team has to some degree in terms of exploring our platform and then also doing the integration. The fastest integration we've had by a customer is 4 hours. That's not typical though. I would say a couple of weeks is essentially what we would expect for a good enough integration to do to start testing with maybe beta testers or whatever. But I would say 2 to 4 weeks is reasonable.
And I would say, when clients work with us, we typically give them like a 30-day sandbox or something like that to kind of kick the tires, and see how easy the kind of process is and work through to make sure that it's right for them. Another question: if we need a custom dashboard, do you help us with that? Maybe that kind of alludes to a larger question, which is kind of like what's customizable versus configurable. I know that kind of our own UI usually isn't the dream of every startup founder when they ideated their device and dreamed of their future success. So what can you kind of customize on that side?
Yeah, so you can create your own dashboards. So there's three ways to create dashboards, right? So one is just configuration. So the configuration is sort of what I showed. So if I go back to the dashboards here, you kind of see the configuration. We have these widgets, so you can add multiple widgets. If I want, let's say another widget here, I can go add and pick, let's say, a value chart or whatever that is, and it gets added here. It's too big, so I can kind of make it smaller and then move it around. So you can kind of customize this existing functionality we have and pick the right set of things. And you can build this dashboard for different use cases. So let's say this was, and this is a summary, but let's say this was a patient dashboard. I can come here and say, hey, I want to share this with my patients. And what that does is when a patient logs in, they basically see this dashboard without the edit control. So they can't change anything. They can't change the layout. They can change what is shown. It's really more of a read-only dashboard for them, but it shows the appropriate data. They still have the ways to interact by filtering, by exporting, those kind of things. Or depends if you allow that permission. But if you allow that permission, they can still interact. But you can kind of create dashboard using our own tools. So that's kind of option one, which may not work in most cases because there's always going to be very, very specific ways you want to build stuff. But it does give you a good start. We have I would say about 30% of our customers that use our tool set completely and nothing else, and they are able to do it. But it doesn't work in all cases. The second option is, as I mentioned, so we have these widgets. These are just our widgets. Again, these are not all widgets, but these are what it's in the demo instance. But you can create your own widget. When you create your own widget, it is available only for you and nobody else, right? So you can kind of build that into the system and upload into the system. And we provide you with an SDK, we provide you with a starter kit and everything to make that widget development very quick and easy. But you can build it and you can do anything that you want there, really, from terms of interactions, in terms of display of data, in terms of whatever you want to do. And that another 40% of our customers do that. So they use our tools, our widgets, but maybe add their own widget in combination because maybe it doesn't completely cover all the use cases. And then we have the ability to do a completely custom UI, right? So that's something we can help as well with our partners and stuff, which is completely customized UI. That is, at that point, it's really whatever your dream is can be built. That about 20 to 30% of our customers essentially do that option. So there's a kind of split of customers, and it depends on your use case, depends on who your users are and how you build, what kind of information you are going to be able to show them, and what stage of development you are. Pretty much everybody starts with our tool sets, and if they need, they gradually build in a custom widget or custom UI over time, depending on where they're going.
Yeah, that's good. I'll add to that a bit. All of the colors and logos and stuff like that are completely configurable inside of the system. So you can have some sort of kind of, I would say, basic branding for the companies that decide to have a full-blown UI that kind of rests on top of our infrastructure. The path traveled is typically, they'll use what we have internally through maybe their clinical trial. And then when they want something that's more commercial ready, they'll start building that very bespoke UI on top. So very good. And then to answer the second part of the question, and Abbas alluded to this too, our focus is almost totally on the SaaS platform itself. So if there was a widget that needed to be developed, if there was a UI, if there was an app that was acting as a conduit to our system, we would typically work with a partner, either one that we know and like, or clients are welcome to kind of bring their own partner that they trust. We can train them on the system, and then we can kind of get them up and running. If there is a improvement to the system that is recommended by a client that would basically work across the totality of our clientele, we will try to build that in for free. So that is kind of the way that we work in that space. Let's see here. Next question: are there any Class 3 medical devices on the platform? Yes.
Yes.
Any?
Yeah, we have all three classes, although we don't see a lot of class 1, but we see some. Largely class 2, but we have some class 3, yes.
Another one from Konstantinos: do you offer a mobile app or integrations to event and notification providers such as IQ Messenger?
Yeah, so we don't offer a native mobile app. Our portals are mobile friendly, so they can, they'll react to, kind of screen sizes and stuff like that, and change the interaction models. So they're touch friendly, but they're not native mobile apps. We do provide notifications, so we can work with kind of push notifications, both for Apple and Google. That's built into our system, so you can use those notifications to push out events, even when the app is not running.
Yeah, we tried at one point to kind of go down the path of making some sort of generic app to work for everybody, but the variety of use cases, we work with everything from kind of wearables, things by the bedside, imaging devices, implantables. The gamut was too wide, so making things mobile friendly was kind of a good median. But if you did need a mobile app or something like that, again, we work with a lot of companies these days that could facilitate that. We have 2 minutes left. There's no other questions here. Any last remarks? One thing, again, we'll be sending out the video recording of this after this concludes via email. If you'd like to get a hold of Abbas or I, we're both available on LinkedIn, or you can reach out at connect@matrix1.health. And we'd be happy to answer any questions you have, give kind of a more bespoke demo of the system that more kind of mirrors your use case, and generally just try to be helpful people as best we can around all of the stuff related to cloud connectivity. So always kind of treat us as friends and resources. I think with that, we'll leave you to your morning in the United States, and we'll leave you to your evening in Europe. Thank you again so much for your attention and joining us today, and hope you got a lot out of it.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you all. All right, take care.